On today's episode of the DeRaud Messinger Show, Dylan, we got expectations. It's been a long time coming, but they're here. And Texas, guys. Texas has a shot, but don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. It's greatly appreciated. I had to plug that in before we give them a shot. Of course, though, Dylan, the Longhorns do one thing very well, and that is make us pay for what we say. So we don't want to drink all the Kool-Aid. We're going to leave some for the rest of y'all. And we're not just going to go, guns blazing into this and say that, we're title bound. Of course, if you're a Longhorn fan watching the video, that would be pretty good for you guys to witness. But we're not going to do that. We're going to be reasonable here, at least given the, recent progress in Sark's era, Dylan. But with that said, it is an upward trend, but we need some more points in that upward trend to really get too excited. Okay, Dylan, I gotta keep you grounded here. I think I'm gonna be the one that's gonna be floating away in a couple seconds on that Kool-Aid, though.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right.
2022 record, guys. You guys know the drill. 8-5 last year with a loss in the Alamo Bowl to number 12 Washington. Not the greatest of ends to a season, of course, but it was semi-competitive. Of course, there was some misfortunes, Dylan, in that game. Some drop passes. I won't name names, but of course, the game didn't just come down to 2 passes, though, Dylan. The Texas got outplayed, fairly enough by a Washington's team that is still pretty good this year, Dylan. They still got
well, also didn't have Bijan and Roshan, right? So
yeah. If
one thing.
All things were equal, it definitely would have been closer, and Texas might have had a better shot, as you're saying. But Penix was a great quarterback, and he's still, back in Washington. But this isn't a Washington preview. Texas, Dylan, has the guys that are returning. But what we're going to talk about, and I'm sure a couple minutes, is some of the questions about this team. And it's more so the guys that aren't returning that are really what's holding this team back right now. Of course, though, everyone suffers these, graduations and draft losses, and that's a good problem to have. Of course, if someone's graduating, congratulations, they got a college degree, and if they go in the draft, Dylan, congratulations, you're making more money than we are. But it's going to be an interesting season for sure. We're going to yet again break it down starting now. Now, we made a video about our toughest games for the Longhorns in 2023. If you're wanting a full breakdown, I'd recommend checking those out, but I highlighted a few key games. September 9th at Alabama. Of course, Nick Saban is not, too happy still, I'm sure, at Sark stealing, himself and a couple of his assistant coaches. And Alabama did pull away last year in a close game that Quinn Ewers, was injured for mostly 3 quarters for. I just had to mention that, Dylan. Alabama likes to hurt some Texas quarterbacks. I'm not over that.
Never forget. Never forget.
But, of course, the Crimson Tide will be a big test. Can Texas keep it close in that one? If they do, things are looking good for the bigger picture. If they can't, it's going to get a little ugly, at least if they can't hang in there. But Texas has a legitimate shot to beat Alabama, just given recent track record. But, yet again, we got some big names, such as Bijan Robinson. I couldn't hold on to it for that long, Dylan. Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson, really the engine, motor, whatever you want to call them, of the Texas Longhorns football roster are gone. So the weight of the world is going to be on Quinn Ewers' shoulders, and likely a running back room that's going to be splitting between a couple of guys. We'll talk about that in a second. Then October 7th is another key game, of course, the Red River game against Oklahoma. You can't expect them to be as bad as they were last year, guys. I'm sorry. I hate to break this news. And then November 24th versus Kansas State. Another, it's gonna be a good game. Of course, Deuce Vaughn, our boy, not there anymore. So, no mini-me running around, but still a stacked roster. But Dylan, just set the table a little bit. How are you feeling about this team this year? Are you liking the odds? Is the Kool-Aid plentiful? Are you depleted on the Kool-Aid? Do you need more?
I love the Kool-Aid because there's nothing more fun living in Austin now and then talking to people and being like, I think these first 3 games are kind of a lock this year. I think Texas got a really good shot. It's one of those things where it's like, they've been building up, right? They went 5-7 their first year with Sark. Now they went 8-4 in the regular season, ultimately lost the last game, so they finished 8-5. But it's steady improvement. So obviously, then I believe that there will be improvement this year. I think they will be better than what their total was last year. I think they're going to get better, and I'm a big believer in your own life taking off the training wheels and taking that leap of faith, right? And I think this is the year, right, that Quinn Ewers is going to have to make that leap of faith because his two training wheels, his running backs in Bijan and Roshan, they're no longer there, right?
That's an
And
all-time Dylan analogy right there.
yeah, and you could have a kickstand, right, with your running backs. But again, this is going to be yours. This is going to be yours. This time to shine, Devin. This is our guy, right? We went to Carroll. We've seen him play in real life. I still believe in that talent. I do not care what people say. I mean, obviously there was inconsistencies just with how he was throwing the ball around, right? Where he'd be throwing it into double coverage, he'd be getting hurried, and he'd be making some errant throws into traffic, and ultimately, like the TCU game, getting picked off and really highlighting some of the that's almost immaturity, but the lack of experience at the helm being a quarterback, right? Because that was his first year, and he got injured during the Alabama game by the ghost of Marcel Darius, right? So again, this is just the growing pains that you're going to go through with this team, and I'm not out on the quarterback here with Quinn Ewers, and I think this is going to be the year where he separates himself, especially with key additions on top of players they've already got. Right, you got your boy Jordan Whittington, you got JT Sanders, you got Xavier Worthy, and Nayor is coming back from injury. Adonai Mitchell is transferring over from Alabama. This offense looks way better. They're more experienced at the offensive line, right? They do have some young running backs, but with Jonathan Brooks and Jadon Blue, so you don't have the consistency or like the know-how of Bijan, right? You know what you're going to get out of Bijan. You're going to get Heisman level running back play, and you're going to have a great tandem with Roshan behind him. But again, I think with just the way that the college football landscape has gone, you need that true quarterback, right? Like a Caleb Williams at USC. I know no one likes hearing that name, but Caleb Williams at USC, that type of player, right? I this is you're to kind of submit that ticket to New York, Devin, and I think it could happen just with the team around him, and the defense is better, which I'm sure that you'll get into, and they got better from last year. There was moments during the season, Devin, where it was almost like, is this offense going to get going? Because the defense is keeping them in it and pressuring the opposing team's offense and playing statistically a lot better, as well as just what you see on the field, right? So I think this team is going to be better than they were last year, and that's me conservatively sipping the Kool-Aid, Devin. I'm not just chugging it like some people I know. All right.
Yeah, we all have friends that are chugging it. I agree, Dylan. Can Ewers take that next step? It's on him. He's put in the work, at least seemingly, behind the scenes. Of course, the mullet is gone. Maybe the aerodynamics of the football somehow are changing now because the throwing mechanics definitely have to be different with the mullet gone. But he's also shed some weight. I believe I saw something like he's lost 20 pounds heading into this season or something crazy. And I saw him listed at like 195, which sounds a little bit light for a quarterback. That I wouldn't say is concerning per se, but it is like a little eye-opening. But
Yeah, you don't want to be too small.
you don't want to be.
Like
And
if he's just getting lean, that's one thing.
yeah, he's a tall guy too. So 195 on him, is different than on me. It's a little different shape we got going. But no, you do have to be optimistic about Ewers. Of course, like Dylan said, he was injured for part of last year. That of course doesn't help in consistency. But also he's got another year under the playbook and an InSark system, and he's got the threats that he had last year, plus a couple, at least in terms of receivers. As Dylan said, the training wheels are off. This is his year to prove himself, and if he doesn't, it's not going to look too great for these Longhorns. But just to list some top performers from last year, Dylan, in terms of stats, just real quick, Quinn Ewers last year, 10 games, 58% pretty much completion-wise, 58.1. 2,177 passing yards, 15 touchdowns, 6 INTs. So just looking at that, one of the questions I had is, can he take the next step? I just posed that a second ago. Can he get close to 3,300 passing yards? Can he get 25 plus passing touchdowns? And more importantly, maybe than those two, because those will come with playing in full games. Can he get that passing completion percentage to be closer to 63 than under 60. 58.1 versus 63 doesn't seem like a big difference, but it did have its moments last season, which ultimately probably cost Texas a game. Dylan, I won't say two. It probably, if you were to simulate everything, I think that's fair. But yet again, he had plenty of reasons to do that. Last year's basically, if you don't count the Ohio State year, which shouldn't have been an Ohio State year, just given the fact that he was set to play his senior year of high school football, last year was his pretty much true freshman year. Of course, thanks to Ohio State, which Dylan would love to dish on right now, he is, or was
Great
last
program.
year, a redshirt freshman. So it is a tough, thing for him to handle. But this year, I think he has more confidence and leadership just going into a second season, with Texas and the 40 acres. Now, here's the painful parts. Running back Bijan Robinson, just under 2,000 all-purpose yards, 1,894, and 20 total touchdowns. That's a big loss. Of course, Dylan mentioned Roschon Johnson. I didn't write his stats down, but he was a major contributor and was drafted pretty high for I'm going to put air quotes, backup running back, because certainly he could have been a starter on a lot of teams. Then you got wide receiver Xavier Worthy, 60 catches last year, 760 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Now, stat-wise, Dylan, in college football, that's not bad for a wide receiver. That's fairly decent. That would still put you in a pretty good tier near the top. However, we know he has more potential than that, especially off of what he did his freshman year. Can he regain his composure? He had some ups and downs last year. Can he regain that composure and consistency and get on the same page with Quinn? That's really the main thing, Dylan. We saw some deep balls last year that just, like a foot off. Some were on Quinn for sure. That's no doubt. We just talked about he's got to get on an accuracy train, Dylan. The train is waiting for him. Can he get on it? Can he, hit Worthy, though, like I was saying? Worthy is also part of the problem in terms of just the getting on the same page. He's a great receiver, but he hasn't been, that Colt McCoy, Jordan Shipley connection yet. And that's fine. That takes time.
Yeah.
But what are you going to say?
Good luck, because it's only going to happen a few times in a century. I mean, that was a once-in-a-generation type of connection with Colt McCoy and Jordan Shipley.
100%.
But with Ewers, you want to, and with both of them, it's just more of like the moderation. Like feel like with Ewers, it was either one extreme or the other, where it was like, okay, constant checkdowns or constantly looking forward the deep. If it's not there, he's still sending it rather than going to the checkdown. Or if there's moments where he should have gone deep, he went for the checkdown, right? So like Bijan. So that's kind of the difference, but also just for the both of them, right? With Xavier Worthy taking the right route or taking the defender one way or being in the right place or making sure you get the hands on the ball right and bring it down with you. It's just that type of stuff. But that's also just being young, right? And they're gaining more experience. Like I think everyone's looking at the context of like last year was supposed to be the year. Like we were right there. We had all this talent. Well, it's like you got all the talent, but like the difference between Texas and Alabama is Alabama's got all the talent, but all their guys are going through the system with a ton of experience and being in a winning culture. So eventually when they do start, they're ready to go, rather than with Texas right now, where the culture is, they bring in a 5-star, the 5-star starts. He's got to learn as he goes rather than be able to sit behind other starters that have been through before and get mentored in that aspect, right? So it's like that's the difference that you're seeing. So I think people are viewing it one way when it's actually this side of it that you should be looking at. I think, and then contextually, I know that's like kind of like lame to think about, but again, it's the truth. Like they're getting better, and this season is gonna highlight just how far they've come, I think.
100%, and the group that needs to be highlighted early in terms of how far they have come. The transition that we don't want to talk about, Dylan, the running back group. We're down with Bijan and Roschon as a lineup for the Longhorns. What can Sark do to game plan for guys that don't have enough experience to be confident yet? Of course, they had great high school careers. And, Jonathan Brooks is going to be the leader of the group, at least, assuming he's going to be the leader of the group. Right now, it looks like he's the case for RB1. Can they get it together and at least provide, Well, for certain, you gotta pick up yards, Dylan. Because if Brooks doesn't pick up yards, Sark is not gonna hold back, and he's gonna put in a guy like Blue or Baxter
Mm.
ASAP. But can they also do the little things that even Bijan, someone that is more of a all-purpose back, did, such as picking up a block, and Roshan Johnson did plenty of that because he was Mr. Grinder over there, just hitting everybody. But can the running back room, in addition to putting up a solid year, it doesn't have to be Bijan numbers. That would be kind of ludicrous to think. Can they at least do little things well, and can each one of them contribute in their own way? Because there are about four guys in that group that are probably going to see some sort of playing time. Of course, ample playing time, probably not. Jaden Blue, one of the top-rated running backs a couple years ago, I believe, the year before last. He didn't get to play too much last season, Dylan. This is a year where he could fight for some snaps, but we haven't heard his name too much. But even with that being said,
Mm.
I wouldn't be surprised if he gets in a couple of games and has his moment, such as Jonathan Brooks did the past 2 seasons. But overall, Dylan, the running back room, what do you feel right here? How are you
Well, I
thinking?
almost want to, yeah, I almost want to highlight like the offensive line. Like I just think they're in a way better place, especially with Calvin Banks having another year under his belt. And like Cole Hudson, like these are guys that are going to be in way better positions. And it's almost like it's like a flip, right? Where it's like the offensive line was inexperienced, but they had a really good running back. Now it's like inexperienced running backs with a really good offensive line, and I think it's going to make it a lot easier for that learning curve for these young guys. And again, Devin, we believe in Jonathan Brooks' talent. Like we were seeing it in high school when we were talking about those seasons where it was Hallettsville, right? Like,
He's looking like me and Madden against Dylan. It was, if you're a
yeah,
high school fan, it was pretty to watch. But yeah, they all have
yeah, and
talent, as
now
you're
he's here.
saying.
Yeah, yeah, right. The talent is there, but it's just like it's the question marks and not seeing them like fully play yet, other than some appearances in like the Alamo Bowl, right? Or like if the guys were tired, they were out there for a bit, taking a few snaps. So again, it's almost like I, it's not even a concern. It's more like I believe in the offensive line, the guys they got up front. There's going to be holes for them to run through, and it will be those little things that you're talking about to make the differences and to make an impact, right? Like the important impacts throughout the game where it is picking up a block to give viewers an extra few seconds or reading the right hole to get an extra few yards for the first down. Like that is ways that these guys will make Texas a better team. And ultimately, you kind of have to be like, oh, they're not going to be like Bijan off the bat, right? So these are the ways that they can separate themselves and be impact players.
Exactly, and like a baseball analogy, they don't have to go to the plate looking for a home run every time.
Mm.
They put some solid contact on the ball, Dylan, that's going to get the runners on base moving. They have
All
the
we care about is if they get on base.
we love the money ball, the offensive line there, receivers there, tight end there, quarterback. Yet again, when he was on, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So I'd assume that
Yeah.
he's gonna hopefully for Sarkisian pick up from where he left off at least before injury in a Red River game that he lit up Oklahoma. But yet again, we'll see if that can continue this season. But all that is offense, Dylan. I didn't write too many notes about the defense, but it's more of a talking point. Is you mentioned it earlier? Can the defense take another step from what they had last year? Last year's
Mm.
team, I didn't say it earlier, but Dylan was talking about some games that were close just because of the defense, such as a TCU is what I was going to mention earlier. The TCU game, of course, was not a pretty game for Texas, at least offensively, and I'm sure some of you guys watching probably had a headache in that game, and I would not blame you. In fact, I'd almost be more surprised if you didn't have a headache watching that game. But the defense did its job, and linebacker Jalen Ford, I was listening to some offensive stats earlier. Ford had 119 tackles, 4 interceptions, 3 forced fumbles, 2 sacks, and the media listed him as the preseason Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year favorite. So he is the guy for the Longhorns. They haven't lost too many big pieces defensively, which is great for Coach K on the defensive side of things. But can some of those freshman guys that were very heralded, Dylan, last season, can they make a step up? Of course, when Sark came in and had a full year of recruiting under his belt, he brought in a load of talent on that defensive front. can some of those guys make a name for themselves? Can Ethan Burke, take a role for himself? Can Baron Sorrell, of course, I believe a different classer, but can Baron Sorrell continue what he did late in last season and, show shades, not entireties, but show shades of Joseph Osai, coming off the edge. Of course, Osai, every snap, though, you had to be worried about him. Texas has been missing a guy like that, of course, since he left. And even before then, Osai was, one of the first in a while. Can someone be a legitimate, playmaker on that front? Linebackers, of course, Overshown being gone. And, of course, we're sorry to hear about his injury with the Cowboys, torn ACL. We hope he feels better and, heals up and next season or whenever he comes back is ready to roll. But with Overshown gone, is Anthony Hill going to take that spot? Who's going to take that extra linebacker spot alongside Ford? There's a lot of question marks on the defense in terms of stuff like that, just the small ones, which, of course, if you're a championship-winning team or a contender, you got to really focus in on some of the small stuff, Dylan. But how are you feeling about defense right now? And they got some transfer additions in the secondary too. So.
Yeah, Catalon from Arkansas is a great addition back there, even though with his injury history, which we've highlighted in other videos. But he's a great addition to add more experience back there in the secondary, which I think is going to be a good unit for them this year. But it will be of emphasis replacing that 90-plus tackles, Devon, that Overshown leaves behind there. So we'll have to see who can fill in, pick up that hole that the defense is missing. But to go off some of the stats that we had last year that I highlighted, they were the third lowest graded defense in the Big 12 last season, Devon. This year, or last season, they were the second highest graded defense. So vast improvement there. They were the second in least amount of points allowed at 21.6 per game, just behind Iowa State. They were fourth in the least amount of pass yards allowed. They were second to last in opponent first downs in the 2021 season. Last season, they're fourth highest in opponent first downs allowed. Actually, I think I missaid that, but flip that basically. Least amount of first downs.
Professor Dylan, yes.
Yeah. Focus on the last part there. And then third most rush yards allowed in the Big 12 in 2021. And then they had the second least rush yards allowed last season. So they improved. I think they're in a great spot to just be in that range yet again. I don't think they added enough pieces where they'll be Iowa State level kind of defense this year. But again, I think they will be again a top 3 defense. And if you pair that with an improved offense, I think the Big 12 title game, Devon, is in reach.
Oh, thank you for that transition because I wrote that down
you're welcome.
On mine.
You're welcome.
The questions to ask, we're still running down this portion, but the last one I had that was a major question to ask is, yet again, thank you, Dylan. Can Texas win their first conference title since the 2009 season? Of course, for Longhorns fans, has not been a pretty ride since that year, of course. But in our opinion, Dylan, I'll give you freedom to voice your own, but I think we would have a similar sentiment at least. I just put a season without a trip to Arlington is a failure. After the regular season, if they can't at least make it to Arlington, I deem that as a failure. Texas last year had a chance to capitalize on a weak Big 12, relatively weak Big 12. Of course, TCU made a big run. But they just couldn't capitalize. They couldn't make it to Arlington. They were basically the equivalent of one game short in the end, I believe. This year, with the experience they have coming back, of course, Bijan, yet again, huge loss. You can't understate that. He didn't, of course, he needed offensive linemen, but at times he did need them in order to make something happen. But it's going to be a big loss. But if Texas can't at least make it, I'd be quite disappointed in terms of an expectation. And I'm more so expecting them to win it, Dylan. I mean, yet again, not trying to sip Kool-Aid. I'm not saying title contenders right off the gate. But they are the favorite in the Big 12. The media voted that. I think just returners and talent that's been added. Talent acquisition is huge in college football now. They have the pieces in play. If they don't make it to Arlington and don't win it, I'm hammering it here so that way everyone knows for the record what, we're expecting. Expectations, Dylan, are a big thing in life, as you're giving us some lessons earlier, life and football. It's just, Dylan, what do you feel here? I see you cracking up.
I feel emotional, Devin. I'm incredibly emotional right now. Yeah, so this year, odds makers have it set at the over/under being 9.5. Last year was in 8.5. I projected them, Devin. I'm not to toot my own horn here, but I said 8-4 last year. They did end up going 8-4 in the regular season. Ultimately 8-5, so they didn't get above the 8.5 threshold. But this year, Devin, I'm getting a little bold, and I do agree with you that a trip to Arlington, or if they don't get to Arlington, would be a season that is considered a failure, given that this is the last year in the Big 12 before they go on the SEC. So you want to leave on a high note. You want to make sure everybody remembers that you won that conference and then decided to leave, right? So like you own that conference still going into the other one. That'd be a great thing to have in the trophy case heading over to the SEC in 2024 with Oklahoma. So I do project them to make it to Arlington, Devin. I've got them going 10-2. Obviously, the first loss that I have is them losing to Alabama. Granted, it's a weird game where you don't have the household names with Bryce Young. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to go on to do great things in Detroit, and then Will Anderson
Oh, really?
going to Houston. Yeah, going to Houston. So those are three guys that it's like originally it's like, oh, okay, they got these guys. Like this is why they'll be good. They got a Heisman winner at quarterback, and an incredibly fast running back named Jahmyr Gibbs. And then this year
Jahmyr
they
Gibbs?
just don't have those household names. They have a ton of talent all around, but there's not guys that you can necessarily just pick out of the crowd other than Kool-Aid McKinstry in the secondary, and then Jason McClellan, who was the backup to Gibbs last year for Alabama. So, and then they've got the not necessarily quarterback controversy, but Saban hasn't picked the quarterback yet, who's going to be starting week 1 between Notre Dame transfer Tyler Buckner, Jalen Milroe, who came in for Bryce Young and ultimately actually beat A&M during that game, but he kind of showed his limitations as a passing quarterback. He is the best running quarterback out of this group, but also you have 5-star Ty Simpson, Devin, as well there. So those are 3 options that Saban can go. So there's question marks there. So it'd be very easy to be like, oh, they'll beat Alabama, but a lot of Saban. They're in Tuscaloosa. Like I don't. This isn't a game that I'm going to be projecting Texas to win. And then it falls into the umbrella of which Big 12 opponent will they lose to in the regular season?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had that between Oklahoma, TCU, or Kansas State. Obviously, those 3 teams kind of jump out to you because as much as it would be great to beat OU again, like 65-0, that 49-0 shellacking isn't something that's going to come very often, if ever again. And I still do believe in Brent Venables as a head coach. Like I'm not out on that guy. I saw what he did at Clemson. Clemson also fell off this year for the most. Not when we say fell off, they're still top 25, but they're not top 10 or so. And that's losing Brent Venables. That's a voice in the locker room that they lost, and he is a good coach. And then they've also got Dylan Gabriel, Devin, the transfer from UCF that we both consider a very good quarterback as well. And he was injured for that game. And if he stays healthy, this is not an Oklahoma team that I would be excited to face. Granted, the defense is still bringing back the same players they had last year on that horrific defense, but that's more experience and more coaching from Venables. So I would hope to God that they'd be a little bit better than they were last year, right? So that is a team that that'd be heavily concerned, Devin, about. And then TCU, obviously, they lose Quentin Johnson. To the Los Angeles Chargers. They lose Kendre Miller, right, at running back to the Saints, and then Max Duggan, right? So heavy losses to key cogs in that machine last year that was part of their run. So TCU is one of those, like, they could come back because Sonny Dykes is a good head coach, so they wouldn't be a team to sleep on, but they're not what they were last year. And then Kansas State, I mean, you got a full year of Will Howard now, who has got an absolute cannon for an arm, but they also lose Deuce Vaughn and Julius Brents. So I would almost expect them, Devin, to lose the game to Oklahoma during the season and then ultimately still make it to the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, I'm in accordance with you for the most part. I do think that the Alabama one would be difficult to win. Not that they can't. I think it's probably going to be ending up, at least picks-wise, before then, to be 50-50.
Yeah, no one says they can't, but that is such a hard environment. Like, it's so much different, obviously, than Alabama coming to town to Austin.
Yeah.
You're going into Tuscaloosa week 2. Like,
Well, that's
Good
why
luck.
that's why preseason, as we're talking right now, I say it's a toss up, 50-50. It's very possible they go and drop that game. It's very possible that they take that game. Of course, that would be a big swing of things. Confidence wise, the team would be, just playing like crazy afterwards.
Mm.
I I don't know if I'd say they're going to lose to Oklahoma. I think that it is going to be a tough test, and they could drop that game. So I'm not going to pencil it in as a loss. I'm just going to be more ambiguous and also agree in terms of in terms of a 12 game schedule. I'm going to say they go 10-2, and what you're saying is what I'm agreeing with. I do think
Okay.
in this ambiguous Big 12 lineup,
See, what do you mean by that?
they're
Like, what do
gonna
you mean
they're
with the
gonna
top
drop.
three?
In my
One of
opinion,
those three.
I think they'll drop one game. Yeah, at least amongst the Big 12 opponents. I don't know if it's gonna be Oklahoma. It could be. It's just yet again. It's not that we're trying to hate on the Longhorns. Of course, we've been just down in Kool-Aid left and right. Going to the store, replenishing it for years. I think this is a fairly logical approach to
I
things.
think we did burnt orange shots before this, Devon. So we're very much in it.
Yeah, it's just, I put down in my notes that they have to be consistent. We haven't seen consistency. We've seen shades of consistency, which, I don't love saying, but there's been at times some of it. But yet again, it's almost like an oxymoron. We need a whole season of work that we can, present to the viewers. And it's, I did the pun. I said they can't let off the gas. It's been rough sledding lately, Dylan, for that offense, especially against TCU. They can't let off the gas. They gotta be supplying the Kool-Aid in Austin. It's just I have 10-2. I put with the trip to Arlington.
That's good.
If they win Arlington, I put potential New Year's Six. I think that would be pretty obvious. They might.
I wouldn't count out. I wouldn't count out the semifinals though. 10-2, or I mean, going 11-2.
Yeah.
They could still be right in it.
Well, exactly. If they don't, as we were talking about, our worry is they drop a game that they technically shouldn't to a Big 12 opponent.
I'm thinking Iowa State. I'm still like that is like the game that I'm going into that.
Even potentially
Put
without
away
Deckers.
Yeah. Well, he might still bet on that game, but but yeah, that is a game that I'd highlight where it's like I just don't trust late season aims like that. Probably under the lights. Iowa State's looking for something to play, especially in that town. They need some life to it. So
I felt smart.
That would be huge.
I felt smart talking about Iowa State and that I think schedule video and hyping up Deckers, and then he goes and gets caught for betting on his own team. But
oh jeez.
Or I don't even
betting
know.
the unders too, which was smart. Betting the unders was smart.
I mean Iowa State always go under. But all that to say, if Texas doesn't drop a Big 12 game that they should not drop, as Dylan's saying, semifinal, at least in terms of expectations, we're not trying to drink Kool-Aid. We're setting the table here. Can Texas, live up to expectations? If they don't drop that one, ambiguous, mysterious game, I think a playoff is definitely on the table. But yet again, Dylan, I just don't trust this team yet. I can't say I trust them to.
What would they have to do for you to trust them? Like within the season, not end of the season.
I was gonna say win all the games.
Yeah, no, I knew that's what you were gonna say. So within the season, what would you want? What would you want to see to build some trust?
Yes, trust is very important in any sort of relationship, Dylan. In our relationship with the Longhorns, we need that therapy session. Of course, in terms of even prior to the Big 12, it would be nice to see, of course, a win at Alabama would be huge. But, even smaller steps, Dylan, like the running back room as we discussed, are they able to at least pick up, they're not going to be able to pick up 100% of the slack that Bijan left. Could they pick up 80%? That'd be a fair figure. Can the O-line not regress? I know some people have that sophomore slump, but O-line, usually when you have more experience, that usually only bodes well. Can they still stay solid? Is there going to be some movement in the line now that the freshmen have now turned to sophomores and there's a lot of guys in that group? Can the receivers, all the receivers that are on this roster, can the newbies step up and prove to be, adding some depth to a team that really needed some, like I won't say third string because that's not technically right, but like third wide receiver help last year. and can guys step up? So there are a lot of small signs. Yet again, the question marks we asked. Can we see the answers to those before Big 12 play? And yeah, I mean, other than that, Dylan, like you said, that's the only real thing we can get that trust is with another year of a record to look at, and it's not a good feeling to say, but what do you think?
I think them knocking around like the newbies in Houston and BYU, I think that would build some trust for me mid-season, just being like, okay, they still got the momentum. They're not falling off after like whether it's an Oklahoma win or an Oklahoma loss, right? During the rivalry game. Like I think those type of games really putting the business to teams that they need to beat. Going into
Yeah.
Waco,
Hmm.
winning handedly. If they beat Alabama, not letting Wyoming flip in or something, because that would be totally a Texas
Yeah.
thing to do, where Wyoming is
100%.
still in the fourth quarter.
And
So
just to add
that
to
type of stuff.
that, that does bring up a good point. I think that is the real indicator, like the doldrum games where the ship's captain maybe he's falling asleep at the wheel and they're just relying on talent. Can they stay
Yeah.
awake, guiding that ship to shore? We'll
Mm.
see. And not only beat the teams that they should be beating, as Dylan was just discussing, can they put a whooping on? Dylan, if you're a
Yeah.
Longhorn fan that's watched any of the Longhorn Network, you will see a random, we're going weird references here. You will see a random game from, the Vince Young era. It's like, a regular season game against a nobody. And what's the beauty of those games, Dylan? They didn't let the foot off the gas pedal. It was, you turn off the TV and it was like, 73-0. That
Yeah.
that
And
gives you
those are the Heisman
confidence.
type of games too. Like those are the games where Vince Young is racking up 100 yards rushing and 300 yards passing. Like
Exactly.
that's
That's
the stuff
where
that just adds to the stats.
that's where the stats come into play, like some of our, just little previews in terms of what can guys achieve. But yeah, it's can you beat up on teams that you need to beat up on and save the stress for games that need to be stressed? We haven't seen that in a while. But so there's a lot to be excited for. What was your final prediction in terms of a record? You said was it 10 or 11?
I had 10-2, but I also had them going like 10-3 and losing to Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game. So
Yeah, and I'm not even going to include the Big 12 championship game. I'm just going to go
yeah.
12 game schedule. I'm going 10-2. But
Mm.
with that being said, with the expectation that they do win the Big 12 title game, I just didn't want to add that into the game counting and somehow find a way to screw it up. But
Listen, if we're gonna go Kool-Aid, we got to go full Kool-Aid.
full
So
Kool-Aid. Well,
gonna keep going
Kool-Aid
on
will
the
be
picks.
had
All right.
in Alabama with
Mm.
their defensive back over there. But guys, we set the table. This is the pulse here. Are you guys liking that expectation, or are you higher on this team? There is the potential. I didn't want to say it. There is still the potential to win a title this year. They have that talent. But yet again, we have a lot of, not doubts per se, but a lot of hesitations and just, I don't want to put all of anything in, one basket right now. But they have the
Yeah.
potential to win it all. So how are you guys feeling in terms of expectations? What's your expected win total? And, what are you happy about? And what maybe, Bijan lost. What aren't you so happy about? But,
What do you miss about Bijan?
oh,
Yeah, leave it in the
we could
comments.
we could leave paragraphs there. But
Uh,
all that to say, thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day.